From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Saini Gray. Colombians are protesting in Bogota against what they say was fraud in the first round of the presidential election last Sunday. There have been reports of irregularities in some of the electoral paperwork.
In Colombia, the issue of fraud is not new. This is why experts have been paying close attention to new complaints on Sunday's first round of the presidential elections.
There
was a problem in 2014 where there was evidence of fraud, and in March 2018 there was also proof of fraud in the congressional elections. We have received all sorts of evidence here in the foundation, and we are reviewing it all.
According to the National Registrar, there is no problem in the Form E14, the document that records the number of votes for each candidate. However, their explanation leaves some unanswered questions.
Obviously, there are a lot of forms. There are almost 290,000 E14 forms. They are being checked, and in some cases there could be a mistake. But that's very different, and it's not fraud.
The electoral observers will review the issue with a sample of more than 95,227 tables available from the election, and it will assess what type of errors were caused in the E14 forms.
We will take a sample of 13,183 tables that are from 882 polling stations. We will review each 14 form and compare them with the ones that the register has in its system.
Experts insist that the electoral process needs to be changed.
This can only be solved with an electronic voting system. While we still have manual voting, fraud could happen.
According to the Electoral Observation Mission, there must be also changes to the way electoral juries are chosen.
In Colombia, the former candidate Sergio Fajardo says he will cast a blank ballot in the second round of the presidential elections to be held on June 17th. There were rumors he would support the leftist candidate Gustavo Petro, but Fajardo decided not to choose him or the right-wing candidate Iván Duque. In a public letter, Fajardo said, "Neither Duque nor Petro. Neither of them represent what we want for Colombia." And we continue in Colombia, where a fundraising campaign has been launched to help the former candidate and peace negotiator Humberto de la Calle settle a debt he ran up on his presidential campaign expenses. A Friend de la Calle group has begun an online fundraising campaign to help him repay a loan of over $500,000. Colombia gives state funds to candidates who get over 4% of the vote, but De La Calle only achieved 2%. The 71-year-old candidate for the Liberal Party is widely recognized for his contribution towards peace. He led the team that negotiated a peace agreement with the FARC back in 2016.
On Sunday, I got the worst defeat that a politician has gotten. And now what I see is a huge mobilization of solidarity. I love you very much. Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, the outgoing president Juan Manuel Santos has signed the country's entrance to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or the OECD. At a ceremony in Paris, Santos said he was proud to finally join the bloc and that his country's experiences will contribute to the organization. Lithuania also joined the OECD. Colombia will also be the first strategic partner in Latin America of the military alliance NATO.
So we can say that we have profited immensely from this accession process. And we also believe Colombia can humbly contribute with our own experiences to enrich the work of this great organization. Colombia is very proud to be the member number 37 of the OECD.
However, some have criticized Santos' decision as a threat to Colombia's sovereignty. During his visit to the European Parliament in Strasbourg, protesters held signs saying "Stop NATO interference" in Latin America and the Caribbean. They also demanded an end to the murders of political leaders and the release of political prisoners in Colombia. Violence broke out in Nicaragua on Wednesday during marches to mark the country's Mother's Day. At least 5 people were killed, 4 of them members of the Sandinista youth. People wearing hoods fired guns and mortars at families taking part in a pro-government rally, leaving 12 injured, including 5 police officers. Opposition groups allegedly burned down government offices and the state radio station headquarters. 2 opposition media companies were also attacked. Since April 18th, Nicaragua has suffered a wave of violence despite the attempts at peace talks between Daniel Ortega's government and opposition groups.
People want this situation and this crisis to end, and the only way is to show them that this movement is irreversible and there is no turning back. People want to peacefully demonstrate their desire to find a peaceful solution to this problem.
It's horrible not being with our boy who was killed, because in all reality he was sincere. He was with us on Mother's Day last year, and if you needed something, he was there. And it's really hard for our daughter, really hard.
Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega has called for all parties to come together to continue the talks. He said it was the only way for the country to overcome the crisis. During a rally, Ortega reminded supporters that the country had recovered after the civil war it suffered until 1990. The president called for the end to division and said that the only way to move forward is by building peace. The government has allowed the Inter-American Court of Human Rights and the Organization of American States to investigate the recent violent events. The Catholic Church has been promoting a dialogue between different parties, but so far it has been unsuccessful.
If Nicaraguans were asked what do they prefer, if violence or peace, I am sure that all of them, 99.9%, will say peace. Only a minority prefers war, confrontation. But of course we want a peace with justice, a peace with healthcare, with education for the poor, for the people, a peace with the right to work. We want a peace for all Nicaraguan families, security for all Nicaraguan families, from the richest to the poorest. Because we all have the same rights before God and before the rule of law. We, Nicaraguans, want the challenge to make a path towards peace.
And our correspondent in Managua, Maria Jose Diaz, brings us the latest.
We have a tense atmosphere here in Nicaragua. Yesterday, opposition groups burnt down the state radio station Radio Ya. They also burnt a government office and destroyed parts of the national stadium. 2 people have officially been reported killed and several injured. This happened while the pro-government rally was taking place, in which President Daniel Ortega made a call for peace and said that Nicaragua is not someone's private property. Nicaragua belongs to all of us, he said, beyond political ideologies and religion, and so the main goal is to regain peace. Ortega also rejected the events that occurred yesterday morning when the opposition groups attacked the Sandinista caravan that was headed to the capital city of Managua to support a vigil for one of the young men killed. Violence continued during the evening in the eastern city of Chinandega, where people who were taking care of the city's town hall were attacked. In the north of the country, one government office was burned down, and the city of Masaya, 30 kilometers away from the capital, there were also violent incidents. Rallies continue across the country, and the Episcopal Conference just sent a statement saying that the national dialogue cannot be renewed while violence is still present in the streets. The Nicaraguan army also published a press release saying that they are serving the citizens and criticizing some media outlets for promoting violence.
The presidents of Venezuela and Cuba have reasserted the importance of the strategic relationship between their 2 countries. Miguel Díaz-Canel met President Nicolas Maduro at the Miraflores Palace in Caracas on his first trip abroad since becoming Cuban president. The 2 leaders talked about strengthening cooperation in areas like mining, energy, education, and health. Maduro also mentioned the need to reinforce the ALBA alliance as he awarded the Cuban leader a decoration.
I am happy for Díaz-Canel's visit and for this day of work. I have given the Libertador de America commendation to Díaz-Canel, who has assumed the presidency of Cuba in an exemplary process that only the Cuban Revolution could do. I have told Díaz-Canel that this commendation is a recognition of a fight, but also a compromise for the future and the new generations.
Dear Nicolas, I reiterate my appreciation for the people of Venezuela. I received this commendation in the name of the Cuban people who enjoyed the achievements of Hugo Chavez, in name of the people of Cuba who have enjoyed your victories, your talent and solidarity against the aggression of the imperialist right, I ratify that no matter the difficulties and challenges, Venezuela can count with Cuba today and forever.
The Venezuelan Foreign Ministry has strongly rejected the latest sanctions imposed by Canada. In a communique, it referred to the behavior as obsessive on the part of the Canadian government, saying it demonstrates an apparent superiority complex. The ministry also said the Canadian government adopted the new sanctions to avoid losing benefits in trade agreements with the United States. Time now for a short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. Relatives of the Ecuadorian journalist abducted and murdered on the border with Colombia have been given back the victims' personal belongings, but they're still waiting for their bodies to be returned.
A past since the kidnapping and murder of the Ecuadorian journalist on the Colombian border. Now, the Ecuadorian authorities are handing over some of their personal belongings to their relatives. Christian, the son of their driver Efraín Segarra, recovered his father's car.
It is a tribute to all of the drivers who accompany working journalists in their work, to the photographers and the journalists. It is a tribute, and it is with gratitude to all those that have supported us in this unfortunate event.
The car which transported the journalist team to Mataje was found in the town by the Ecuadorian military forces. The relatives drove around the city in honor of their loved one.
On the day of the declassification, I saw a document that had photographs of my father next to the truck. It's really painful to only have the truck and that there is no justice or investigation into what happened. We realize the responsibility of those who should be providing security. Already today, they are not with us, and their work has not been completed.
The meeting point of both friends and relatives was at the tribune located on Shiris in the Ecuadorian capital, where they continue to speak for answers from the governments involved.
Since the delivery of the documents have been made, they are really absent in understanding and have already completed their cycle through the government. The actions really say that there are no answers, nobody, so it seems that it's not important for them to repatriate them.
The governments of Ecuador and Colombia said the suspect in the murders is Guacho, leader of the armed group Oliver Sinisterra, who is also currently accused of the kidnapping of the couple that is still missing on the northern border. The relatives are also expecting answers from the Ecuador's government to continue in order to the first meeting of the special commission organized by the Inter-American Court of Human Rights to investigate the case. Denise Herrera, Telesur Quito, Ecuador.
All workers in Brazil are into the second day of a 72-hour strike over the high cost of fuel and cooking gas. On Wednesday, the workers protested outside the headquarters of the state oil company Petrobras. They are demanding the resignation of Petrobras CEO Pedro Parente and the end of the market-based pricing policy, which was put in place by President Michel Temer. All unions say a much larger strike will be held if their demands are not met.
Our main reason for this strike is this pricing policy that Pedro Parente has put in place, which favors foreign investors more than the people themselves.
We are against the sale of our refineries, and we want a publicly owned Petrobras company that will fulfill its social function. We will produce, refine, and fix the price of fuels and cooking gas at a price that people can afford.
Social movements in Guatemala gathered in the front of the Ministry of the Interior to urge authorities to end the killing of indigenous and campesino leaders. They urged the government to stop the persecution of human rights activists, which is promoted by President Jimmy Morales. They want the public prosecutor to fully investigate the murders of the 3 campesino leaders, which occurred during the last 2 weeks across the country, and to serve justice.
What we are asking for is that the 3 killings of campesino killers be properly investigated. They were murdered after disastrous statements made by President Jimmy Morales as part of his persecution campaign against these leaders. Some of them are political prisoners. There are also 4 people detained that authorities don't want to release. There's a systematic persecution of human rights activists, and unfortunately the person who should be calling for unity is not doing so.
Argentina's President Mauricio Macri has vetoed a new bill approved by the Senate to control the rising cost of essential utilities. The law was created to bring the prices of water, electricity and gas back to the levels they were at in November 2017. It would have only allowed increases in line with users' salaries or pensions. The move was proposed by the opposition. Chile's Supreme Court has ruled that transgender citizens can change their name and gender on state documents without a sex change operation to prove their gender identity. The ruling said that Chile guarantees citizens' rights without discrimination based on race, gender, language, religion, political opinion, or any other social condition. The court concluded that gender identity is an essential part of a person's self-identity. Pope Francis is sending a mission to Chile to investigate sex abuse cases and to try to repair relations with victims. Archbishop Charles Seculna and Monsignor Jordi Bertomu are leading the mission to the Diocese of Osorno, one of the areas most affected by the abuse scandal. This weekend at the Vatican, Pope Francis will host a group of Chilean victims who are also priests. The number of people who died in Puerto Rico during Hurricane Katrina is much higher than previously reported, according to a team from Harvard University. The Harvard report says nearly 5,000 people died between September and December 31st last year. Previous government reports put the figure at just 64. The study said a third of the victims died due to a lack of medical attention. And with hurricane season due to officially begin on June 1st, Grenada's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell is challenging the Caribbean to learn the lessons from the 2017 hurricane season, which devastated many in the region. The Prime Minister says regional governments need to include climate change resilience in development planning. And for that, Mitchell created a new government ministry, which is called the Climate Change, Environment, Fisheries, Forestries, and Disaster Management.
Practice will require a shift in focus from sustainable development to climate smart development. At the macro level, we must accelerate our transition to the green and blue economies and in so doing synchronize economic development with environmental sustainability. Operationally, we must institutionalize climate risk screening of all infrastructure projects and programs of both the public and private sectors.
Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley toured the Graham Hall Nature Sanctuary to see firsthand the sewage problem on the island's south coast. After the visit, she said the Grenadian government was asked to assist the Barbados Water Authority in the repair of the leaking sewer lines. The sewage crisis began earlier this year, and Mottley called the situation a national emergency. Urgent repairs will now begin under the guidance of the authority, the Coastal Zone Unit, the Environmental Agency, and the Barbadian Association of Engineers. They will draft a cabinet paper to recommend solutions to the sewage problem.
If we need any additional assistance.
Mexico has turned its desert into a sea of solar panels as part of a push to generate more than 40% of its electricity from clean sources. With 2.3 million panels, the Villanueva plant is Latin America's biggest solar park and the largest outside Asia. The plant will produce enough energy to power more than 1 million homes. Time now for another short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
Make the people and resend all of it.
Welcome back. The future of the Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy is in doubt as the Parliament is debating a no-confidence motion against him. The motion was called for by the main opposition Socialist Party after a court sentenced 29 people linked to Rajoy's Popular Party on corruption charges. The Basque Nationalist Party has just announced it will vote in support, which means the motion will most likely succeed. The final vote is scheduled for Friday. The European Court of Human Rights has found Lithuania and Romania complicit in the U.S. intelligence-led torture after 9/11. The ruling comes after cases were filed on behalf of 2 al-Qaeda detainees currently held by the United States in Guantanamo Bay. The U.S. captured Abdul Zubaydah and Abdul al-Rahim al-Nasiri after the September 2011 attacks in New York City. Lithuania and Romania hosted secret CIA prisons a decade ago, and authorities were aware that detainees were held there illegally.
Holds that there has been a violation of Article 3 of the Convention in its substantive aspect on account of the respondent states complicity in the CIA high-value detainee program, in that it enabled the U.S. authorities to subject the applicant to inhuman treatment on its territory and to transfer him from its territory in spite of a real risk that he would be subjected to treatment contrary to Article 3.
One of the most powerful North Korean officials, General Kim Yong-chol, has met U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in New York to discuss a planned summit between the leaders of the two countries. Kim is the most senior North Korean envoy to hold talks on U.S. soil in nearly 2 decades. The meeting with Pompeo is in preparation for a historic summit between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump. The on and off summit is being closely watched by the international community. And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has met North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in the capital Pyongyang. Lavrov discussed the nuclear program and bilateral ties between the two countries. His visit comes amid preparations for a planned summit between Trump and Kim Jong-un. Commenting on the U.S. demands for the meeting, Lavrov said a country cannot achieve denuclearization in one sitting. There must be several stages, and every stage must be a two-way discussion. Peruvian soccer team captain Paulo Guerrero will be able to play in the World Cup in Russia after his disqualification was overturned. The soccer star will join his national team that has already departed for Europe. The Swiss courts made the decision after Guerrero's attorney appealed the ban last Friday. The player completed a 6-month FIFA ban after testing positive for a byproduct of cocaine. Peru will play in Group C along with France, Australia, and Denmark. And that has brought us to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Suni Gray. Thank you so much for watching.